What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the Wise Take NFL DFS Wise Stream. A very special edition. It's Thanksgiving Eve, and we are here to cover the Thanksgiving slate for 2020. CK013, or you can find me on Twitter at CK_013. Joined once again by the GOAT, a true OG. Not Paulie D, but the original OG. Patio Joe. You can find him on Twitter at Patio Joe. Ref. Joey, what's happening?
Not much. The family men, or the ones with children, or ones on the way, are at home tonight.
Yeah.
The ones that are just have a girlfriend and are probably hitting the ski slopes right now. So we tip our hat to Mr. Paulie D.
Yeah.
And we give thanks to him. He'll probably jump in and say, "Hey, yo," and jump out. And that's it. So we give thanks to Mr. Paulie D. I hope he's out there somewhere having fun doing that, hitting the slopes as we know it.
yeah, slopes. That's yeah. Shout out to Paulie, man. You know, it's funny. We were planning like when we we're gonna do the show, and like we're in the text with the three of us, and sure enough, Joe, family man Joe, Wednesday night's better for me. And the funny thing is, Paulie, like, thinking, like, I respect where he was thinking when he said Thursday morning is better for him. And, like, he's just thinking about the moment. Like, he's not thinking about the future at all. He's just thinking about that night. He's not thinking nothing about how are you going to feel Thursday morning when you wake up after what you do Wednesday night. How are you going to feel Thursday morning? So, Paulie D's is going to be writing the GPP breakdown, which is already up. He already did the dirty. He made sure to get that done, take care of the nation, because now, now he's doing different kind of dirties across the Miami area, I would assume. But Joe, you and I are here to discuss what was a really good-looking 3-game slate and is now a decent 2-game slate. I know D. Millie was saying in the Slack chat earlier that he felt it made the slate better. What are your thoughts, bro?
I mean, I just think that it's a basic. It's like back in the day, the 2-game slates that we used to play. It's good practice for the playoffs, because we might have the 2-game slates. It's you basically kind of have to like pick which way both games are going to go and kind of like make your lineups to that. You don't really want to play much cash. My article is going to be, if you want to play cash, that's fine. It's going to be more towards, single entry, low entry tourneys, but cash games in two 2-game slates, it's just you're basically everybody's going to have almost the same lineup, and it's just kind of tough to get different. So that being said, I don't mind it. It's good for one day. I wish there was a third game because I really liked the third game. So, but it makes it a little bit different. I mean, obviously, like you said pre-show, we're going to be looking at different players that I normally, like we texted about a guy that we're going to bring up that I would not have even cared about if there was a third game.
Yeah, it's exactly what it does. I mean, I like told you, man, I had my article's done, it's up, but it was already ready right when we got the Steelers news. I'd updated the projections, everything was rolling. I think I posted the cheat sheets, and then we got the Steelers news, and I was just like, damn, because now it's not just about removing the Baltimore Ravens, the Ravens Steelers players. It's also about replacing them and looking at the dynamic of the slate and understanding, or at least, trying to figure out where you think ownership's going to go because of it. So either way, it's not a terrible 2-game slate, and that could be me being more of an optimist at a situation. But when you're building teams, I felt like you were able to build teams, and there were still ways to get different. And it's still some football, and Thanksgiving is just a celebration of life. So that's just that's what we're gonna do.
We should just enjoy the best holiday of life tomorrow. That's all you need to do.
The best holiday.
I think that's why they took away the third game, because they needed us to enjoy the best holiday of life.
Yeah.
And totally 2020 that we would have a game be switched on Thanksgiving.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's literally the theme of 2020. And another thing that I know Paulie and a lot of the guys in the Slack chat were like real bummed about is they've been beasting on the flash drafts. So they were looking at 3 games throughout the day to flash draft, And so like they were pumped, man. It was flash draft season, everything. It was like ready to rock. And now, man, they only get 2, man. It's a bummer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big bummer. But I'll say one last thing about it. The Steelers, man, wow, like they get the short end of the stick every time. Like they just get fucked. Okay, and they're still undefeated.
They're 11-0. They're just fine.
Put that out there. They're just fine. It is true. But anyway, moving right along, Joe. We're going to start things off with the Houston Texans and the Detroit Lions. We have a 51 total. It's down from 51.5. The Texans opened up -2. They're up to -3. Talk to me about Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans first.
Yeah, we'll start right off. First game, just when you're doing quarterbacks, I think if you're doing your single entry tourneys and you're a person that's only going to do a few lineups tomorrow, don't overthink things. I think that there's only one other quarterback that I really like on this slate. But the one that I like the most is Deshaun Watson. He's going to be my article as a core play. He provides the best floor, the best ceiling, the best rushing upside. He just sticks out as, the best play on the slate. Now, obviously, if you are doing a lot of lineups and you want to be contrarian, you're immediately contrarian if you go with anybody else but Watson or the guy on the other side in this game. So to me, it's Deshaun Watson. Moving down to the running backs, it's Duke Johnson. I feel like he's just the vanilla play of the slate, but he's going to get 90% of the work of the snaps. And we all know that you can run on the Lions, and if they could, commit to the run, I think that he can make value. I think he's a better play on DK than he is on FanDuel, just because he should catch a few more passes and provide a little bit more in the passing game like he did last week. You played him on FanDuel, he was terrible, but he at least caught a few passes. So DK, he wasn't so bad. Wide receivers, it's really looking at, Fuller and Cooks, which I like if you want to get off the board a little bit, which I think just because of his name and people know him, people are going to play Kiki Kuti. And we all know that he's a head case. He's been chalk before and busted. If you're going to get off the chalk a little bit or a little bit like a third wide receiver, Kuti is not my guy, but I think a lot of people are going to go there. I think he's an easy fade for me. But I think I like Cooks a little bit better than Fuller just because Cooks seems like he's been involved more in the offense more than Fuller has the last few weeks. But in my one lineup that I made, I have both of them in the lineup, just kind of just throwing both of them in there. So in tight end, I'm not going to go there and try and pick out who's going to be productive at tight end.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head with Deshaun Watson. I expect his ownership to be like massive, tournaments, cash games, everything, but he's by far got the highest ceiling, I think, and consistently too. Like his floor, it's just been phenomenal. The matchup's good against Detroit. I will say this: I think one way to play Watson and be a little and be more contrarian as far as your build goes is to play him with as many players as possible. Like not literally, but like play him with all three. Play him with Kuti, Fuller, and Cooks, and just hope that he just really goes out and you have all those three guys and they all correlate well. That's
or
one
Duke,
way. Or Duke, yes, who I was gonna say next. Duke is like the leverage play of Watson. You could play him with Watson, of course. He's he can catch the ball, even though Watson doesn't check down a ton. You have the potential. You just need a touchdown or two. It's only a 2-game slate. But if you're not playing Watson, Duke is kind of a leverage play. I'm not saying you have to play Duke if you don't play Watson, but it is the leverage play because nobody's playing Duke because he's been terrible the last two weeks with DJ out. The snap count still looks good. Detroit, their biggest weakness has been the run. They're bad overall, so I'll leave it at that. But just saying, if Houston scores and it's not Watson involved, it's most likely Duke Johnson that was finally able to find the end zone or whatever the case is. The receivers, Fuller and Cooks, I agree. Cooks is just easier to get anyway, so like I'm good with both of them. I think Fuller I mostly play in either the flex if that's what I could afford, or just forcing him in with Watson teams. But Cooks is the one that just comes more natural. And then I think the tight ends are kind of interesting, right? They're both low owned. Paulie made a good point that we could see more double tight end sets. Definitely a possibility, especially if they play from ahead. And then Kiki Kuti, I mean, yeah, it's interesting because I didn't think he'd be that popular, but after hearing the news and then with losing the Steeler game, I'm hearing his name mentioned more and more. So maybe his ownership will be a little higher than I anticipated. But I do think that he fills the Randall Cobb role, and I think he plays the same as Randall Cobb because he knows the system. He played this position, so I don't think they really skip a beat, to be honest. And I think he's in play, and like I said, I think the onslaught is in play, just as a way to get different.
Let me ask you a question. Other thing is, defenses are kind of weird. I can kind of I was trying to think if I could see another defense than the one that I kind of like, which is there's four Washington, terrible defense. No, I don't even really like Washington.
No.
It's I think that if we're buying into the fact that maybe, Detroit's broken a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe Houston defense is not going to be that bad. Which I don't mind them. I mean, obviously you can play every defense if you want. But I just think that what we saw from Detroit last week was, they didn't have Swift, but there's, maybe Stafford's hand isn't as healthy as it seems, and he can't make the throws as good as he always has. Just a thought.
No, I understand. I mean, when you look at Detroit, like Stafford to me has really struggled without Galladay. Like he's just looked different all season, and now you got Amendola out also, and you got to think about who he's throwing to. Marvin Jones hasn't really shown up a ton. Not saying it's not a good spot, and this will transition us into the Detroit side as plays. But point being, on a 2-game slate, the Houston defense is not actually out of the question. Talk to me though about the Detroit Lions.
Detroit, the other quarterback on the other side, I like also. Stafford has played in 10 career Thanksgiving games. He averages about 260 yards and 1.7 touchdowns a game. I mean, it's pretty decent floor, and I'm sure he's had a few 3-touchdown games in there during Thanksgiving. So he seems to play better on Thanksgiving. So I do not mind this at all. If you want to go there, it is like I said, there's 4 quarterbacks tomorrow, and I just like these two way better than the next game, and just because of the floor ceiling combo that they provide. So to me, I like Stafford. Running back wise, it's DeAndre Swift core play. I'm banking on that he's going to be back. Obviously, if we get news that he is out, that changes things a lot. That really, really makes things a little weird. I'm not going to go back to Adrian Peterson or Kerryon Johnson. That might have took years off my life last week, which I'm not very happy about. Thank you, D. Millie. So it's just a thing where I think that DeAndre Swift, we're hearing good things. He's got to pass some morning tests and stuff. Hopefully he doesn't wake up dizzy or anything, and he'll be fine. He's just going to get good volume. They saw what their offense is with him and without him. Receiver-wise, Marvin Jones is probably one of the safest bets on the slate. We have no Amendola, no Galladay. We know he's going to get the targets. Bradley Roby's nobody special if they follow him or not, so I don't mind that. The other receiver, Marvin Hall, and Quintez Cephas is always dart throws you can throw at them. Flex option, I think TJ Hawkinson is just going to be the chalk just because you could fit in anybody you want, and he's been pretty stable all year as it comes to the tight end position. But I'm full fading him next tomorrow. I'm totally fading him.
Yeah, man, I think I think Marty in the chat kind of hit it on the head as a way to approach the Houston D versus DeAndre Swift. If Swift is in, I think this game is competitive. Houston, if you can run the ball, that's really all you need to do against Houston. They've been that bad, and Swift is by far been the most successful between the little trio of running backs they have over there. So Swift is kind of a deal breaker. If Swift is out, I do think Detroit's offense struggles a little bit more. If he's in, I think it makes a big difference. And like you said, I think he becomes a core play at that point. And the good news is the first game, so we will have this information. So looking forward to that. The receivers, I'm not terribly interested in the value guys. I think Marvin Jones, I'm willing to take a shot on. I really like T.J. Hawkinson. He's my favorite tight end on the slate, and I feel the most comfortable with him. I think that with Galladay and Amendola both already being out, I think that we see an increase in targets for him. And even if he doesn't get an increase in targets, man, I feel comfortable with the floor he's demonstrated. So I do like Hawkinson. I feel like the pricing isn't really out of control on either site. We can find ways to get him. And I do like him. And if Swift is ruled out, obviously, I don't think Peterson or Kerryon Johnson are by any means core plays. But I probably will utilize at least one of them in rotation in my teams because of the value it opens up. And I do believe this is just one of the best matchups in football, running backs against Houston. So if the price is right, I could take a shot. I don't know which one just yet. I think I would lean towards, it depends on game script. Like when I'm building the Deshaun Watson stack, am I anticipating this being like a shootout or, Washington, or Detroit playing from behind, or do I envision like a fluke where Detroit jumps out and ahead somehow, which is tough to believe in which I think that AP is the guy. But with that said, Joey, we'll move on to the next game. We've got we got some control I got to take care of right quick.
Oh no, we really really have some colorful people here. Matthew Smith, I appreciate you stopping in and questioning about my sex life. I happen to know that I have twins that aren't 3 yet, so that would take a little bit of banging within the last 3.5 years. I've been married for 7 years. Anything else you'd like to know about me? Great. I appreciate you taking time to question and to join the Wise Take Nation.
And unfortunately, it's people like these people that come in here. They got nothing better to do on Thanksgiving Eve than to come in here and just troll people because they're envious of the Wise Take Nation. And it's a shame, too, because now I got to remove the freaking chat from the screen. And, it's just a shame.
Yeah, but, and you know what, CK? I always say this. I love to get a reaction. I'm getting a reaction. It's just like the guy that's doing the promo that's the heel in the middle of the ring. If the crowd ain't saying nothing, then you got nothing. But if they're booing you, if they're cheering you, then you get a reaction. Thank you that I give you a reaction. I love it. I love it. It's so nice. But I appreciate you coming here.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's great.
Absolutely. Moving on, Joe. We've got the Washington football team, the Dallas Cowboys. We have a 46 total down from 47. Cowboys currently 3-point favorites at home. They are favored once again. I think there was a point where people may have thought Dallas may never be favored again, but here they are at home on Thanksgiving. Talk to me about the Washington side first.
Yeah, the Washington side comes in, and this game I don't really, really love. Like Alex Smith, he's just going to check it down and not really throw downfield too much. He doesn't really have much ceiling, let alone, his floor is just okay. You could totally fade him. Running back, and people like Antonio Gibson, and I could see him being popular tomorrow. I'm just willing to go other places. And I just think the game script in this game is just going to go a little bit differently. I'm not even on McKissick because actually the Cowboys, defend running backs out of the backfield pretty well. And I think this is going to be a low scoring game anyway. So if I was picking one of them, I would have Gibson, but over McKissick. I think they'll try and run the ball more. But Dallas is okay on the run. I don't mind it. Wide receivers, McLaurin, hopefully he plays. We haven't really gotten any, word on whether or not. I know he's probably questionable. If he plays, he'll be probably the highest owned receiver on the slate. I don't mind playing him, but I don't mind fading him either. The receiver that I like the most, we were talking a little bit, is I like Cam Sims. He only played 5 less snaps last week, and I realized that he only didn't do very well. And I just think he's going to be that low-owned play that nobody has, maybe 10 under 15% tomorrow, because everybody's going to go to Steven Sims, who scored the touchdown last week. But Cam Sims played more snaps, so I would prefer the volume over anything. And then tight end, Logan Thomas had a bad week last week, but he's involved most of the weeks, and he gets about 5 or 6 targets. If you want that, I like that, but I actually prefer the tight end on the other side better.
Yeah, man, I think so. Washington's an interesting team, right? So they're running a lot of plays with Alex Smith under center, but part of the reason they're running a lot of plays is because they're not really going down the field a ton, doing a lot of checkdowns, taking what the defense gives them, and Alex Smith has been successful in gaining the yardage, everything else, but it's like the big play kind of eludes him, and you can see it in his touchdowns, man. He'll go 300 yards. Why didn't his fantasy score to back it up? It's because he didn't have the touchdowns. So I think I'm interested in Smith, but I'm almost tempted if Swift is in to take a shot on Stafford before I take a shot on either one of these quarterbacks. But I think Smith would be that guy because I think that Dallas, with their linebacker core getting a little more healthy, I think that the pass is just really where they're the most vulnerable. And so I'm interested there. And McLaurin, obviously, who I expect to be popular, and who's the most expensive receiver on the slate. Crazy world we live in. I also think that between the Gibson McKissick situation, I kind of am interested in McKissick in Alex Smith teams because obviously you want the pass game work for sure from him. I don't know if he gets a double-digit targets. I know Paulie was mentioning that in a text thread with us earlier. I don't know if he gets a double-digit targets that he was getting like consistently, but I think he still will be involved. It really comes down to game script. If they have to throw, they will. And the only way they're going to have to throw is either one, they can't move it on the ground, which is, I think Gibson is a fine play, or two, they're actually trailing, which is also a possibility. With that said, Washington is actually my favorite defense. I'll say that to get that out the way. And the reason for that is because as decent as Dalton and the Cowboys looked last week, Washington's front defensive line is one of their strengths, and the Cowboys' offensive line is broken. It's not getting fixed this year. Just when they play teams that can put pressure on the quarterback, they're going to be in trouble. So I do like Washington defense. And like you said, for value, man, a lot of value here if you want it. Between the Sims guys, Logan Thomas, I'm kind of locked in on Hawkinson and McLaurin and McKissick as my guys here. But there's definitely some interesting plays. Dallas is still one of the worst, if not one of the worst defenses out there because I know a couple teams that are worse. What about the other side, Joe?
Other side, Andy Dalton, you could play him. He's not bad. Obviously, he played decent last week in that game against the Vikings. Washington defense is way better. This is a primetime game, and we know what Dalton does in primetime. Ezekiel Elliott, I don't mind him. I think they're going to try and run the ball a lot. I think he's going to do a lot better than his last performance against Washington. And he's going to get the goal line carries. If you want to get a little different, I don't mind Pollard too. He seems to get a little bit more run. Wide receivers, you could play Lamb and Cooper is fine. I prefer going right back to Gallup. He didn't do very well last week, so that's going to lower his ownership. And on a 2-game slate, you're trying to get off the board a little bit that way. But my favorite play probably is Dalton Schultz at tight end. Washington can get beat on the tight end, and Schultz has been more involved the last few weeks. So I like him as just a pivot off of Hawkinson. He's been getting 8, 7, and 6 targets the last 3 weeks he's involved. So I'm going to go with that. And I believe it or not, I don't mind the defense if you want to pay all the way down if you're trying to get everybody in. And every defense is in play. They're at home. If you think they're going to win, they might get, run the clock out or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much in this game. I think it's more of I like the other game way better to stack, and this is kind of just filling in the pieces.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a little nervous about Dalton in his spot because of what we talked about with the Washington line. I think that Amari Cooper's kind of interesting. Zeke, as of right now, seems like a must, right? When you look at the running back on the floor, I mean, he's getting 20 touches one way or another. We haven't seen him get thrown the ball a ton. lately, but I think that if the game script calls for it, we will, especially if he is under pressure. So I do like Zeke, despite the fact that I like the Washington D so much. And I think Cooper and CeeDee Lamb are my next favorites. Gallup seems like a pretty interesting value play, right? Like the first game with Dalton, he got a ton of targets, and then last game he didn't really get looked at a ton. But he's 3,500 on DraftKings, and I think if you're worried about Kuti being chalk or whatever, I think that Gallup is an interesting pivot, along with the Sims guys. I mean, he's capable of getting those targets. But I do kind of like Amari Cooper at home. Set some strong home splits, and the prices for those guys are fine. But like you said, Joe, it's not so much the quarterback. I think it's more grabbing exposure to the wide receivers. With Zeke, in a scenario where you think this game puts up some points, I'm with that. Dalton Schultz also, I guess you could throw in the equation. Tight ends everywhere, man. Not all of them very good, but they're there. With that said, we'll do some top threes. Right? Like it's strange, but I guess we'll do top three. So top three quarterbacks.
Watson, Stafford, and Dalton.
I'll go Watson, Stafford, and Smith. Top three running backs.
Swift, Zeke, and Duke Johnson.
Oh man, dude, I think I'm going with the same ones, man. Like Duke Johnson for leverage, I guess McKissick would be my actual one. But yeah, I mean, I have to say Duke Johnson because if I don't have a team with Watson or another Texan, then I may be forced to play more Duke than I'm comfortable with. That doesn't feel right. But the Zeke and Swift are easy though. Top three receivers.
McLaurin, if he plays, obviously. Marvin Jones and Brandon Cooks.
Let's see here. I'm gonna go Brandon Cooks. I will go with I guess Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, yeah, and then I guess McLaurin. I'll go with the number 3. I'm tempted to say Cooper, but I think McLaurin is definitely the safer option. What about tight end?
Tight end, I have Schultz. Then I have Hawkinson. Then I have Logan Thomas.
Yeah, I got Hawkinson number 1. I'll go with Schultz and Logan Thomas in that order, but I definitely like my boy Hawk. All right, I think that's pretty much gonna do it, Nation. Breaking it down, dirty style as we do. To those people in the YouTube chat that tried to throw us off kilter, they got nothing better to do on Thanksgiving Eve than to sit in the chat and fuck with a bunch of people talking about fantasy football and just doing their thing. It's funny too, man. There's some people like you got to think of the kind of person that would think to invest in a model where like you could constantly troll an account by making new accounts. You know what I'm saying? Like you got to think like for you to get to a point where you want something like that. Like where are you at in life, man? Like where are you at in life? That's something you want. You would go out of your way to figure out how can I troll these community of people. Like a lot. It's like, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? I guess people just stay in other people's shit, and that's just the human nature, I guess. For some, not for the nation, but for some. Joe, anything in closing before we get up out of here?
I am thankful for everybody in the nation, even the trolls. You guys, believe it or not, you're projecting more than you know it.
Yes, it is true. But shout out to the real nation, though. Shout out to the people that were in the chat waiting as we came in. Shout out to Stephen B, Todd Bono. That's right, OG Todd Bono. The DFS OG, the DFS Demon, Steve Samso, Roddy Pope, Craig, Chris, Jay Herb. Good to see Jay. Like these are the people of the nation. DFS Wizard, Marty, the people who are constantly contributing to the community and discussing it. They really want to get better. They want to improve their craft, and I think one of the best ways of doing that really is when you're learning is to talk things out and open up your mind. Sometimes you get locked into some plays and it's hard to open up your mind a little bit, and talking to other people will force you to do that. and force you to think outside of it. Yeah, once in a while, somebody may talk you off a good play, and but at the same time, it's everything like you can use as a learning experience and incorporate these things or these mentalities into your process to help you take it down next time. So that's the benefit, the beauty of a community, and the beauty of what we have here at the Wise Take Nation. So with that said, I am also very thankful for the Wise Take Nation. We appreciate y'all. Have a very safe, happy, successful Thanksgiving. Have a profitable Thanksgiving. Myself, Patio Joe Paulie D, will be back on Friday night with the Week 12 Wise stream, position by position, Triple OG style. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. For Patio Joe, for myself, the entire Wise Take Nation, as always, good luck.
Peace.
Yeah.